election. I want to introduce Daryl Lloyd, also goes by D. Lloyd, host and producer of Turning Life Corners here on WPPM. We also have Bill Cobb. He's an organizer, political analyst. He's also working on a campaign. And I also want to bring back Vincent and Ron because I think you also have important perspectives as well. Welcome, everybody.
All right.
Hey, Vanessa.
Okay, first question that I'd love for each of you to answer, and starting with the bigger picture. What is the importance of this upcoming election? We're in the primaries now. The first hour, I think, is really dedicated to local elections and the importance of that. We've been hearing the dog whistles coming from Donald Trump this week, which, has been inciting a lot of problematic behavior. How important is this election? Bill Cobb, we'll start with you.
Obviously, it's paramount for so many reasons, right? People have locked in their homes for months. There are protests across the globe. But really getting to the roots of politics, I think these elections are important because so many people are now civically engaged. As a result of people's lives being impacted directly by politicians on a day-to-day basis, one of the most important things is that people are actually translating what's happening to them, their responsibility civically, and actually translating it into a need or an urgency to vote. Many people who don't vote are engaged today, and it's reflected in how people are showing up at polls across the city.
D. Lloyd, I know your famous tagline is "You better pay attention." You've been doing a lot of work trying to inform people each week, especially about things happening with the federal government. How important is this election?
Well, I would like to say hello to everybody. First of all, thanks for having me on tonight's show. But it's kind of complicated because you have to understand, as far as the black vote is concerned, we're not a monolith. We don't vote as a block. See, people always think because people have black or brown skin that they're going to think the same way. But we don't think like that. We are all individuals like every other group of people out here. So that's the first thing people have to understand when they talk about voting and the black vote. Now, because of Donald Trump and his election, he has brought out so much racism that a lot of people are looking where to go. Whereas in the black community, they are now becoming more and more politically educated. Meaning, that means there can be several camps here. One camp is the voting downstream camp, where they say, no, we're not going to vote for any of those presidential candidates because none of them have a platform for us. So why should we continually give the Democratic Party our vote for nothing because we've been a captured party? So we're going to show them, no, we're not going to give it to you because, as you know or should know, politics is an exchange, not a gift. What are you going to give me for my vote to give it to you? That's first. Now, the other thing is, now we have a lot of people that are going to sit out because they're just not interested and don't believe in the vote. Okay, so the black vote is going to be very, very tricky here. And this primary election will be no indication of how it's going to go.
I agree wholeheartedly, D. Lloyd, with what you say. Here's the bottom line with this election, okay? This is just Vincent. I was at the Republican National Convention 4 years ago, right? And what the Republicans said was this. They didn't like Donald Trump, but they hated Hillary Clinton, right? And I'm telling people, this is a clear, the demarcation between the candidates could not be clearer in this election. Like, there is a stark difference between a Joe Biden and a Donald Trump. The thing I think that's going to hurt Democrats is sometimes we're a Democratic Party, and you know this, Bill, we eat our young. We snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. We'll feud among each other. We'll argue. We'll say, well, I supported Bernie. well, I can't support Joe Biden. But here's the question. We know that there were 20 candidates that ran for the Democratic primary, but there's only one that's won, and that's Joe. So if you stay home and don't vote for Joe Biden, that's a vote for Donald Trump, because I'm guaranteeing you, folks, Donald Trump's voters are going to come out.
But that's skipping ahead to November, Vincent.
We already are. You know we are. We skipping ahead.
Primary. You know what, Vanessa, there's been lots of confusion in regards to that. Like, that narrative has really drawn people into places of confusion. Like, there is a primary. It's a closed primary in Pennsylvania. You can only select between Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, or Tulsi Gabbard. As I was talking to you earlier, Vanessa, there was somebody on my Facebook who was indicating that fraud was happening because there was so much Bernie Sanders on the ballot, and that was the reason that people weren't going to actually come out and vote.
And you know, the other thing is this, Vincent, some points you make are valid, but I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Now you say voting for Joe Biden, not voting for Joe Biden is voting for Trump. My thing is this. Joe Biden,
I said it helps Trump. I didn't say it does. I said a non-vote, staying at home helps the incumbent in this election. That's what I'm saying.
Even with that being said,
right.
The difference is Joe Biden and Donald Trump. There is no difference. They're the same guy. Hear me out.
Okay.
Same guy on different sides of the coin. I.e., look at Donald Trump's new record and put it up against Joe Biden's old record.
Okay.
All Biden is trying to do now is make amends before he kicks the bucket and get elected to the presidency. So you may say, if you don't vote for him, it helps him. But you know what? Black folks didn't put Donald Trump into the White House. White folks put him in. White folks got to get him out.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Hold on. That's not going to happen.
Wait a second. I want to allow Ron Adams to chime in on this.
So I hear where D. Lloyd is coming from and Vince. I can tell you from looking at the last election that I will never denigrate anybody who has decided that they're not a monolith, that they're not going to vote because it's the lesser of two evils. In politics, you have to put forward a great candidate, because we saw that last time. Vince is exactly right. They hated Hillary Clinton, and that's what happened. And that's a big reason why Donald Trump got in. And the other thing, what Vanessa asked us was the importance of the Latinx and the Black vote. And although white people put Donald Trump in last time, we saw a historic increase in Black vote the last two previous elections with Barack Obama on the ballot. And the question is the hatred for Donald Trump and a lot of minority communities enough to increase that Black and Latinx voting that we saw from the Hillary Clinton years, maybe not to the Obama years, but at least more than we saw 4 years ago. And that's going to be very important, especially in Philadelphia, because if we can't get that turnout in Philadelphia between Latin and Black votes in the Democratic Party, Pennsylvania will be a red state again. And that was one of the first times, definitely in my voting life, or any time that I've been around, that I've seen Pennsylvania go red. So I think it is very important that vote comes out. But D. Lloyd, I totally hear you. Like, the days of saying, well, we're going to vote for the lesser of two evils was over. If you were not putting forward the right ideas and the platforms for your community, then, or for those communities that you want to vote for you, it's no one's fault but your own. Don't put the onus on Black people that they have to vote for you to get Donald Trump out. Do the things that people need for Black people to vote for you. But on the other hand, D. Lloyd, I know what you're saying about his old record, but Black people put Joe Biden in. Black people are the reason Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee.
And you know what? Therein lies a problem that I have, and what I said earlier about we're not a monolith. Because if you think about it, if it wasn't for Claiborne giving him support, he'd never been in it. And South Carolina gave it to him. But those people, they did what they had to do because of Clyburn, who, you know, is in Nancy Pelosi's pocket, getting paid from the MAG field, the MAG people, filling his pocket.
D. Lloyd is on some other stuff. I didn't know it was like this. All right.
No, so
hey,
right. So it's so much conversation about the candidates and
Right.
their parties,
Right.
but let's drill a level higher. Take a look at the campaign finance reports and see what the contributions are compared to Donald Trump, compared to Joe Biden, and then crisscross the list, guys. Those are the individuals who have the most significant influence in our elections. Has absolutely nothing to do with that. Level up again. We are voting for delegates. Delegates can pick and choose which candidate they want. So
Right.
when we really, we know at the macro level that it doesn't meet you the micro. And I understand that we need to talk about narratives that move groups of people, but Black and brown communities need to be civically engaged 365 days a year, 7 days a week, night and day, because it is essential to us ever achieving any sort of political, social, and economic capital that's going to transform our lives in any way, shape, or form on this continent.
Right.
All right. Well, I'll just chime in, just kind of talk about for Latinos what this means. I mean, it's also very complex because, Latinos aren't a monolith either.
Right.
And, I'm Puerto Rican and, I hear you, D. Lloyd, because in Puerto Rico, people can't vote for president, right?
Right.
And it was the Obama administration that instituted the Promesa bill, which has caused the austerity measures and the financial control board of the island. And the island has really been colonized by both parties this entire time. So it's an entire system of oppression. Now, if we look at other types of Latinos, like, Mexicans, who are obviously really focused on drug policy reform and the drug war and immigration, because all those things intersect. And also, we're having a lot of immigration from Central America because of all of the unrest happening over there. I think a lot of them are unfazed because of what they've experienced in their own countries in terms of what's happening right now. And, Obama and Joe Biden deported millions of people during their administration as well. However, I do think, there's now we're shifting into, okay, but what are the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? We have a president that has been abusing executive orders, right, to institute these horrific detention policies, family separation policies, increasing funding and power for the Border Patrol, for ICE. And we've just seen what a horrible human rights situation we have happening right now along border communities via that executive power, right? So that is a problem in itself. And to Obama's credit, we did not see him abuse, or any president really, executive orders in that way. We also have an island, Puerto Rico, that was devastated by Hurricane Maria, where, almost 5,000 people died during that hurricane due to a lack of support and infrastructure from this federal government, which is rooted in racism. And also with these earthquakes, we've seen a lot of the same problems. And so for us, it's also complicated, right? Because we know the person who's in power right now has taken measures to exploit, abuse, and marginalize our communities. And we also know that other administrations have done that too. But for a lot of people, it is a life and death situation. They're killing people at the border. They're killing people during these disasters. There's a tropical storm brewing right now.
Yep.
In the Gulf. And, and just to kind of hit climate crisis, one party rejects the science and does nothing. And in fact, pulls us further away from progress. And another party, tends to want to take more progressive measures, even though they don't go far enough, in order to stop our carbon emissions and work with the international community. So for us, those are the things I think we're considering in this particular election. And it's not easy. And, the thing that I often say to other Puerto Ricans here in Philly is that we got to vote for our people at home, because they don't have representation. They don't have any voted members of Congress, and they cannot vote for president. So if we want different leadership, we have to step in and we have to vote and we have to organize our people. My next question is this, because we got to move on. I'll let you, I'll come back to you, Daryl. Given that this is important, it does impact our lives. It impacts our communities even more than any other communities. What is the platform that needs to be put forth? Because so many of these candidates did not resonate with people of color. You know, we have there Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg and even Elizabeth Warren. They literally had no support from Black and brown communities. And then you saw a lot of Latinx support go to Bernie Sanders and a lot of Black support go to Joe Biden. But still, I think a lot of people are dissatisfied with the platform or even lack of platform. Like, what is the DNC platform? And what should it be? What do they need to be telling people, especially now in this moment? D. Lloyd, I'll let you go first.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Well, to me, as you know, I am an ADOS person. I don't know how well versed folks here are about
Different kind of Democrat.
Okay.
I was gonna say keep it clean.
So,
We're on the radio. No, just joking, D-Lloyd.
my whole thing is this. Until this country deals with the original sin of slavery, closing the wealth gap between blacks, ADOS, and whites in this country, there's never going to be some kind of rest, because they have to close the wealth gap for people that built this country on their backs and have nothing. So this what we're seeing daily is an explosion of all of that plus policing. So some sort of reparation has to be given, not talked about, because we've talked. It's been shown how it can be done. That, and we have to overhaul the police situation. That's one of the reasons why people are so on Larry Krasner's back, but he is at least trying to do something when other DAs weren't even thinking about that.
He's one of the first ones, D. Lloyd.
Right. You know, and like I had written some stuff today about how Philadelphia used to be the rising star in this country on beating black folks in the head. And now he's trying to do something. So that should be on the platform. Then healthcare for all got to be on the platform. See, these are things that Bernie was talking about. I'm not saying I'm a Bernie guy, but some of those things made sense. And until the Democratic Party puts that as part of their platform.
But we can have a platform that has everything. But here's one of the difficulties, and we're all being political, right? You can have a Democratic president, but if he doesn't have a Democratic Congress or a Democratic Senate, none of that stuff's gonna. I'm sorry, they're telling me that the curfew has started, so let me turn off.
We're all getting that alert right now.
I apologize, everybody. So it's okay, but
it's all of us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I think that's critically important. You know, I say this all the time. The presidential election is the sexy election. Everybody focuses on the presidential election. But if you want to have systemic change in Congress, you got to have a Congress that you can work with. You know, we can talk about reparations till we blue in the face. And I agree with you, D. Lloyd, that I'd like to see it. But if we don't have Congress people in there that we question and say this is an important platform for me, they're not going to vote for it. Because we don't even ask congressional people in Philly that question, let alone Walla Walla, Washington, and Kentucky.
Vincent, well, you hit on something that I was going to save for the end of this.
Right.
Because the one thing people don't understand is all politics is local politics.
Yep.
Because you have to vote for the people in your state at every level, because they're the ones that pass most of the policies that affect you at home. Then those national folks, you have to run people like-minded and send them there, and that's how things get changed.
I just want to let Ron go because Ron has to leave us in just a few minutes. And then after Ron goes, we'll go to Bill Cobb because I know you have something to say, Bill.
So first, I want for all of our listeners to know when D. Lloyd's talking about ADOS, he's talking about American descendants of slaves, right? You know, slavery in America, and that's a very good point. I think when we talk about what the agenda needs to be, I mean, I think we have to realize that there's a stark reality here and how we're going to deal with that, and that is for the Democratic Party, for the DNC, for this presidential election, there really is no platform. The platform is not Donald Trump. I mean, that's basically what it is. That's why we have Joe Biden. Let's be real, people.
Come on, right? They brought the punching bag in.
Like Joe Biden was elected or was picked because he was the one that a lot of Democrats thought is the easiest candidate for a lot of those people that voted Obama twice and then voted Trump to come back and vote Democrat. It's the only reason Joe Biden was picked. It's why Clyburn came out. It's why, if you really know the game, you know that as soon as he won South Carolina, Obama and his people behind the scenes pulled out everybody else out of Super Tuesday.
Threatened, cajoled, pulled money from, called donors. I got emails and phone calls.
Bill, you know what time it is. And so, unfortunately, at a time where we do need health care for all, where we do need to talk about reparations, it's something that I've thought about a lot, that I actually, about and plans that can pass by. At a time where we need more, we need to resolve DACA and immigration reform, like Vanessa was talking about. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those things on the plate because, like Vincent Thomas said, the only thing we're really telling people right now is a vote for anyone not named Joe Biden or not voting is a vote for Donald Trump. And that's been our only platform. And we're really going to find out whether or not a candidate can be so hated that they lose to an empty suit like Joe Biden, who is not a good candidate, who is really not for us, is really not for anyone. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, not only is his past atrocities a problem, this is a man who's, it reminds me of Reagan when he ran a second time. He's not all there, but he's not Donald Trump, and he's the easiest one for those center-right, kind of center-left, white Democrats that voted Trump. Can we get them back? I mean, that's what it seems like to me.
This is what I say. Joe Biden is club soda because your stomach is upset.
Yep.
So the whole world wants some club soda now, and that's it. So thinking about bringing it back to the macro level, right? We have failed. Period.
Right.
We have failed. I've failed. I've been working in politics. I've been a grassroots organizer since birth, and I have failed to continuously educate the people around me about the importance of being engaged civically in the community on a day-to-day basis. In fact, I measured success by leaving the community and changing the world rather than staying home in each one teach one, which was given to me as a child from you, brother, and from other individuals who taught me at R.W. Brown Community Center. We can talk about all the external leaders. We can talk about all these people that we know have no business making decisions that impact our daily lives, and certainly not the lives of anything that we love, people, places, things, a nation, or a culture, or a vibe, or any of that. And so I'm just... all of us is still mindful of me to say, even as a political consultant, even though I'm driving the campaigns right now across the country, I'm more mindful of how I am impacting the people about voting, about their knowledge of how a city council person or a city rep, like I met Vincent as a regular damn citizen hanging out in City Hall every day because I was an activist and I got tired of going and begging for bread from these politicians and them having the ability to tell me no and not understand what the need for the outcome was and how it would impact the people. And so 10 years later, I'm electing one of my homies to Congress against a 31-year incumbent who's lying about showing up in his district where an explosion of COVID happened initially. Right. So we just got to get in the trenches, and all of us can do it.
Yeah, I just want to also highlight, another issue which isn't talked about. And I think it's, COVID brought to light so many issues in terms of inequalities, but we really have to be talking about the widespread poverty right? Especially in Philadelphia, the nation's poorest, biggest city.
Mhm.
And there's a connection to that. People have literally, they've looted or taken things from all the stores in every major city. It's happening right now. There's a connection, right, with the poverty that's happening in our communities that's been longstanding, with the low job wages, with the high cost of housing, with the rising cost of food, and with what people are facing now, 40 million jobs being lost.
Right.
And people are wondering why people are taking things and quote unquote looting or liberating goods, however you want to call it.
Very good.
Again, sure, we could talk about that, right? Talk about people stealing, but what about poverty? How long are we going to let our neighborhoods decay, our schools decay, and the infrastructure fall apart? There hasn't really been a lot of effective dialogue on poverty. I do think the Fight for 15 campaign has been pretty effective in organizing people and highlighting the fact that wages haven't gone up. But this poverty, is not only affecting us in the United States, but it's a big reason why lots of people are immigrating here, right? So when people don't have resources or jobs in other countries, especially in Central America, they come here looking for better opportunities. So we really have to address poverty, whether it's through the DNC agenda or local organizing. That's something that's not being spoken about right now in this moment of COVID-19, in all of these protests and organizing, and how that poverty is also directly linked to mass incarceration, right? So I think that those are some of the things that we need to highlight. So we're going to say goodbye to Ron. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your perspective.
All right.
Yo, Ron, be safe.
If you're just
Always. Good meeting you, Bill and Deloitte, and seeing you again, Vanessa and Vincent. Thank you very
Peace
much.
and blessings, beloved.
Good to see you, brother.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching WPPM special election coverage. We are having a debate and dialogue about the importance of elections in Black and Brown communities, what type of issues need to be discussed and addressed for our communities, and talking about the importance of this upcoming election, both local to Vincent and Deloitte's point, and national elections. So a little bit earlier, I believe Ron referred to a dip in voter turnout, especially in Black and Brown communities within the last election. And Pew Center released a report about who the non-voters are, because it's really easy. In full disclosure, I'm someone who has voted in third parties, and a lot of finger pointing was directed at people in third parties, right?
If you vote for Jill Stein, she's a Russian bot.
And actually, almost 50% of eligible voters didn't vote, right? So that's the conversation I want to have right now. People sitting out the election for various reasons. Pew, when they looked at those non-voters, found that they leaned more Democratic.
Yep.
So Republicans had actually much higher turnout. They leaned Democratic. They tended to be younger people under the age of 35 that were low income and people of color. So that's a really large group of people. How do we reach them, given that these candidates, are not exciting people, are not speaking their issues, but yet those votes are needed to win, right? So
Yeah.
what's the strategy?
So, Vanessa, thanks for that question. It's something that I have to consider working on a congressional race in New York City, and something that I'm considering as I launched a state reps race here in the city of Philadelphia. And it's no difficulty for me because I have been organizing directly around issues pertaining to votes. So like in the city of Philadelphia, we organized formerly incarcerated people to begin voting to change things. And so it's a direct result of years of organizing among formerly incarcerated people such as Malik Aziz and Wayne Jacobs and so many people who are in Graterford and Camp Hill, who work to say, hey, we're going to work in the DA's office. We're going to work with the DA. If the DA don't do what we say, we're going to move them. And so we were instrumental in moving Lynn Abraham out of office. We were successful in putting Steph in office and removing him out of office. And obviously, if people don't know, all of Larry Krasner's platform items were things that I wrote on a napkin upon meeting him in a diner on Broad Street. I leveraged them in my capacity as the National Deputy Director at the ACLU. I gave Larry my platform, told him that formerly incarcerated people would show out in droves. I took over close to $100,000 from the ACLU. I hired 24 formerly incarcerated people to knock on the doors of over 24,000 ACLU members. And you all know that the media blitz and the celebrities that we joined for creating a blueprint of how to elect so-called progressive prosecutors in the United States. But that took 20 years. That was on the foundation of work that individuals hadn't invested in. And so while they're coming up with these schemes and these tactics to leverage them in order to get people to show out and vote, your power is when it's concentrated in knowing where power is and leveraging that every day. So formerly incarcerated people have relationships now because we have put us in office. And so it's not a question of how to get power. We keep aiming at the wrong thing. If you want money, take over the damn Federal Reserve where they print the amount of money that they want every single day. They printed money and gave it to trillionaires and billionaires and still have us begging for bread. And we talk about fight for 15 and healthcare when what we could do is stay home and do nothing and see what happens to them as we exchange and we barter among themselves. See what happens when your security guard don't come. See what happens when you can't go to that grocery store. Everybody who serves them needs to sit on their hands and make demands. We are far greater than them. So we are mixed up. And the reason that people aren't investing in politics and these strategies and these tactics is because they are futile and useless to actually having free people, born free, living free, and acting free.
And thinking free.
Of course.
That, and to address what you asked earlier, Vanessa, about the how poor the city is, you have to go back and to come forward. You got to remember, Philadelphia is just like any other big city in America when it comes to housing, because redlining, it was here too. That's why you have blacks in a certain area.
The Badlands.
And now the big gentrification situation is putting black peoples out of homes they've had for years, which was a source of wealth for them. And then on top of that, these enterprise zones are only enterprising for people that got money to put it in there to get black people out. So every kind of policy that's being made in Philadelphia is to hurt black, brown, ADOS people. So until we think about what we're doing here on a local basis and ask those direct questions, what is an enterprise zone going to do for me? What is gentrification going to do for me? Why can't I live over there? We need to take care of this and ask those questions and have those politicians have that as far as their platform instead of how much you going to get me to go out and knock on the door.
Vanessa, one of the things that the late Lucian Blackwell told me, and I've covered politics in this town for City Hall for a lot of years, and I'm still surprised that Bill Cobb speaks to me even after all this time. No, Bill, I'm just joking. But the bottom line is, Lou Blackwell taught me something I never forgot. He said, I got no permanent friends. I got no permanent enemies. I have permanent interests.
Permanent interests.
That's right. That's right.
And successful groups of
leaders.
People remember their permanent interest, right? And I think in Philadelphia, let's take a look at the simple math. This city is a black and brown city, right? As the Latino community and the black community controls everything. So it controls who sits in our state houses, it controls who sits in our city council, and it controls your mayor. You have no right not to demand anything from elected officials. I work for an elected official. If enough people pressure him or her or whomever, things change. So if we want that change, we got to understand that people of color can make it happen in cities like Detroit, New York, Chicago, that kind of thing. And to get rid of poverty, that's a marathon. That's not a sprint.
What's racism?
It's racism. I agree with you.
Like the whole, like all these things that force us to suffer is a direct result of racism.
Oh, it's
so as we indicate, right? It ain't difficult to talk about reparations. We know the dollar amount that's owed to people. The Federal Reserve has the capacity to print that money and distribute it all over the world. So let's talk about 14 trillion, baby, and nothing else. And that's why people will not follow leaders. We jelly back, we soft foot, we take the first check that anybody give us. We don't know that we are the masters of civilization because we conceived it. And now what we are under is a mockery of what fools learned at the feet of us. We got to know who we are and stand up. And so I'm a little bit taken aback by still having to function and operate in a political system where I'm leveraging, their tools and their tactics and these ways. But if we are rooted in community, if we are grounded, if we are those individuals like David Richardson, like Leon Sullivan, like Cecil B. Moore, like the individual, like Elijah Cummings that still live on the block in the neighborhood in which you are, and you still talk to everybody that you ain't supposed to, Vince, because it's more important that I be kind to you that I see every day than those individuals that read about me in the newspaper and may want to do business with me later.
Thank you.
And you know what, Vincent? It's not a marathon to take care of this problem.
No.
Because look at what they just did 6 weeks ago. They just printed the money and said, here. So that's all they got to do. But they don't want to do that.
We don't force them to do it.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. We don't force. That's what I'm saying.
Airborne. So right here, Philly. Listen, Philly didn't have to be poor, y'all. I'm gonna tell y'all what I would have done in the event that I was in charge and saw this coming. What I would have done is hired a staff of people to resolve the technical issues in the city of Philadelphia. So everybody would have had full Wi-Fi, and every single person would have been hired to go ahead and function to get that money out of the federal government into what they consider the poorest, largest city. As the federal government said, everybody who wasn't eligible for unemployment now was. Everybody who was of age needed to have applications in before any other state to ensure that wealth flushed into this city. And now the Republicans knew exactly what the potential was of passing that legislation, but they also knew that we don't even have the capacity to leverage what we do produce in legislation. We are fools, folks. I mean, the money was on the table. We should have had it in our hands, and our leaders was playing tiddlywinks. Today, CLS, thank goodness for the leadership of Community Legal Services, who all these attorneys are now working to get anybody, every single federal, state, and local benefit available. There are resources on the table. We should not be letting Mitch McConnell, whose state gives less than 150 million a year, less than anyone else, be getting all that daggone money, and the residents of the city of Philadelphia are the poorest. There are opportunities still present, even in the midst of this, and because of piss poor leadership, we missed it.
Yeah, I just want to talk about the budget a little bit, because if we look at the federal budget and we look at how much resources are dedicated to Department of Defense, military spending, that we're still at war. We're still funding these wars that have cost us trillions of dollars. So we don't need to tax people. We don't need to print money. We can just reallocate resources, right?
Correct.
I read today that 30% of Minneapolis's city budget goes to the police department.
Yes, it does.
30% of the budget.
Yes, it does. Yes,
so,
it does.
When talking about police reform, yeah, we can pass laws and do this, that, but the most immediate thing we could do is reallocate the resources, right? And so
$6 billion in New York for police. $6 billion.
That's more than
they cut everything. On their military. $6 billion.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to look at, here in Philadelphia, we have all these universities and churches and nonprofits, and they don't contribute anything. So, there's getting a significant tax break on all of the properties they own. So people are calling for pilots payments in lieu of taxes. Again, one of the reasons why we have trouble accessing internet is because of a company like Comcast, who ironically is headquartered here in Philadelphia, right? And one of the things people don't know is that the federal government was accepting proposals for big grants to establish municipal Wi-Fi. People in Philadelphia wanted to apply for that grant. Guess who lobbied against it, right?
Yeah.
And they lobbied against the Civil Rights Act of 1866.
You
And
mean them folks that gave Joe Biden all that bread, right?
right. And also during this pandemic, they made a bunch of promises about expanding access, and that just has not happened. So we do have to look at special interests and how they're funding these campaigns, and how those special interests, they eventually come to collect on those debts, right? And so that's why we're in the situation we're in. And we really have to, if we are progressive and we are looking at the Democratic Party, we really have to have a frank conversation about those special interests, right? And how they're influencing so many legislators when it comes to the time for them to vote. I do want to move this conversation along because, we have about 18 minutes left. And so far, I appreciate all of your very candid responses. But again, we're about solutions. We're about pushing things forward. Where do we go from here? I mean, I think right now I've been really looking at the mayor's statements every day, and the issue of police violence is still not being addressed, right? Violence against protesters is not being addressed. And I think a lot of people are calling for new leadership. They're obviously disgusted with a lot of these mayors and governors who are not really acting, especially in Minnesota, right? Look how long it took for charges to get filed. It's turning people off from electoral politics, from these parties, from people who don't look like them, that claim to represent them. But obviously, we have to do something as organizers, as communicators, and all four of us, I say, are communicators, right? What do we communicate to those people who are feeling frustrated, who maybe have not participated, especially all these young people? There's a lot of college students at those protests. So many. None of them have voted before. Or not none of them, but a lot of them have not voted before. How do we move forward from here in a pandemic era, during national unrest? What's the work that needs to be done?
Bill, I'm curious to hear what you think. This is Vincent. How you're trying to get people out during a pandemic because you're dealing with campaigns. I think that you have to remember that there's going to be a certain part of people. The great thing about a democracy is people have a right to vote. Another great thing about democracy is people have a right to sit their butt home and not do anything, right? And that's a frustration with it. Most elections are never going to be 100% voting. And most people can tell you, I don't need 100% voters. I just need my voters to win, right? So, Donald Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 by 50,000 votes. That's the equivalent. That's 1/3 of a city council district.
Yeah.
We got 50,000 people probably in the area around most like West Philly, 30th Street to probably like 54th Street. So people need to come out, right? And I think sometimes in national politics, and it's frustrating because you can tell people issues, you can knock on their door, you can tell them the importance, but sometimes you feel in politics like you got to juggle and spin plates to get people's attention about voting. And sometimes this elections aren't sexy, but it's about your day-to-day life. If I told you that you need to go and do something to get your check, you'll go and do that. But I can't get you to go 5-6 blocks to vote for your future. I'm not. It's a frustration, I think, to all of us. But I'm one of those people that's convinced that we can try to get as many people to come out, but we got to convince those that see issues and do the education that Bill talks about, that this is in their long-term interest. I tell people all the time, I have permanent interest. Voting is part of my permanent interest. Yes, Joe Biden might not be the sexiest candidate in the world, but every state had a chance to vote for that sexy candidate and he won. So it's who you got.
Yeah, one of the things I've been trying to educate people around is how much the cabinet members control so much of how the federal government operates. Mm-hmm. And so it's like here, at Philly Cam, we deal with the FCC, right? And there has been a significant difference with this new commissioner, Ajit Pai, and
Right.
so many oppressive policies have come down the pipeline. I mean, the FCC historically is like any other federal agency. They're a bureaucracy and they move slow.
Right.
But what we've seen is that with this administration, that they've been moving at lightning speed to what I call a wrecking party, right? Like they're about to get evicted, so they're smashing everything up.
Right.
And so they're trying to get as many things passed as possible. And
Correct.
you're seeing this in every agency, like the Department of Education with Betsy DeVos. You know, you're seeing the Department of Labor. I mean, the Environmental Protection Agency. They're rolling back tons of regulations. They're undoing a lot of the reforms made during the Obama administration.
Right.
And so I feel it's important for people to understand you're not just voting for president, but you're also voting for the cabinet members that will be installed at those federal agencies. Again, we look at the person who's in charge of ICE right now, right? Their personal ideology around immigrants is what is causing and contributing to this chaos at the border. So again, we need to look just deeper than the, president and vice president. And
Right.
then of course we have the issue. We have a Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, right? And Ruth Bader Ginsburg is holding on to dear life.
Right.
So we're all right. We're all rooting for her. We're all praying that her cancer does not come back and that she's able to continue on. But there's been a number of Supreme Court decisions,
Right.
and they're all, by one vote.
Right.
They're very rarely unanimous decisions. So I feel as communicators, I think one of the biggest things we can do is explain how the government works. It's pretty clear. A lot of people still don't know how the government really works. And we saw that too with Obama, because people put a lot of pressure on Obama to do certain things. And it's like, the president can't do that, right? That has to go through Congress. Congress has
Well, if he Donald Trump, he can.
Thank you.
But I think,
So, right?
but I think, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just want to say to that, right?
Go ahead, Bill.
So, right,
You.
what if the Supreme Court fails? Or has the Supreme Court already failed? What if
Citizens
federal
United,
judicial?
I would say yes.
But, right. So listen, right. What if federal judicial system failed? Has it already failed? For me, the perception of what everybody is holding on to will merely die away if those institutions are now truly reflective of the outcome that we're living with.
Mm-hmm.
I have no fear of it becoming completely Republican or completely Democrat. It's going to be what the wealthy people need in order to enslave continents of people and to have other people participate in the fallacy and hold it together so that they can continue to produce a group of people who will control the group of people that they are using to produce the stuff. I mean, you're right. If Democrats really knew how to organize people, we wouldn't be having a conversation about Joe Biden versus Sanders. What they would be saying is that if you keep Donald Trump in office, children are going to continue to be raped inside of jails in the United States by United States guards. That's what's going to continue to happen. We need to talk about the very decisions that people are making on a day-to-day basis that he's empowered, and very much so. So people are not even attributing the harm that Donald Trump is causing to the nation to him. Instead, they're shooting at the wrong thing. It's just because this is not set up to educate us, to inform us, or to empower us. It is all set up so that those individuals who sat down and determined that they were going to take all of the money out of the world, globalize it, and control it, are doing it. And we are playing their game, and we need to stop.
Right now, what I was going to say before, I don't remember who said it, but the problem that, and I'm going to go local first. Mm-hmm. One of the problems that you have to understand is this. How can a person or a group of people that have to worry about where they're going to get their next meal,
right,
how their kids going to be educated, where might they have to move to live, if I get sick, where am I going to go get healthy? How are they worrying about that 24/7? How are you going to educate them to understand you can do something about that tomorrow,
Right.
while I'm worried about all this today?
And Deloy brings up a good point. That's why I've always been a big believer in politics. You got to start local. You got to bring it to people's front stoop and front yard. If you want to educate people, and you know, people can't see it on the radio, but I see a Giants thing in the background. D, I like you anyhow, even though I'm an Eagles fan forever. You know, but you got to keep it local. Like sometimes we try to make politics this like global, larger, national thing. People got to worry about their local life.
Vincent, how about this?
Right.
You have a message.
Right.
You go to people and say, look, we got a plan. Our group of people got a plan for all y'all to keep these homes in your house forever. This is what we want to do. Will you support us?
That's it.
We want your kids to go to that school to be just like the school in every other place.
Right.
This is our group's message. Will you support us? That is something they can hang on to right then and there.
Right. And I don't disagree. Lloyd, that's what I'm saying. The whole politics is local. Even people's mentality is local. You got to sometimes make a national issue be a local thing. I tell people all the time, I'm going to give you my Schoolhouse Rock version of city government, ladies and gentlemen, that you're listening, okay?
I like this.
Okay, ready? Anything, if it deals with your trash, your cops, your fire, and your pothole, call my office in city council. If this agency starts with the word Pennsylvania, that's a state issue. Pennsylvania Department of Labor, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, your driver's license, your WIC card, any of that, that's state. Now, if you got a Social Security, your grandmother got something national, that's Congress. When I say that to people, people get it. Because it's something that they understand, right? We don't have to make this as complicated. It really isn't. So that's my Schoolhouse Rock for people. If you ever call my office and the office starts with the word Pennsylvania Department, I'm going to tell you that ain't us at council. That's a state rep. But that's the kind of education we need to make with people so that they understand that it. I like to do bite-sized politics, not whale-sized politics. Because like you said, boy, if people are dealing with all these daily life issues, they trying to worry about eating. They don't care about, bro.
That's a good piggyback. I want to piggyback on that, Vince. So right locally, what I really do in my community is feed people, clothe people, heal people, tell people I love them, give people good counsel, and resort people to good, resources. But on every election day, for the last 10 years, everybody I know, from politicians to elected officials, have called me to ask me, who should I vote for, Bill? Because I'm doing the work on a daily basis. That is politics. I have political capital because I built social capital. So quickly, everybody will say, hey, Bill, you should run, you should run, you should run. No. My responsibility is to teach people how to build social capital and how to turn that into political capital and to bridge that to the platform that the ancestors are still begging us to deliver. Equality and freedom as we were born, and teaching other people how to live with those principles that should be rooted in our politics.
Let me always tell people, and this is it, in any elected office, one of the most powerful people has the name chief of staff next to him. You don't know who he or she is, but they can get you everything you want.
Wait, Vince, say that one more time.
It's the chief of staff. That's powerful.
Wait, Vanessa, can he just say that? You said what title is power?
Chief of staff.
And remember, my best buddy, I launched this campaign to run for Congress in New York City's congressional.
There you go.
Congressional district.
You know, I tell people all the time, I'm a powerful guy in my office. I talk to the councilman every day.
What you're talking about is this. You don't want to be the king. Nope. You want to be the king maker.
Right. Kingmakers last for a long time.
That's right.
Hey,
That's
listen. I work for them here in the city of Philadelphia.
Right.
I work for them nationally. I'm consulting with them internationally. If you are in the rooms, I was a former national deputy director at the ACLU. I know the value of creating opportunities to make David Richardsons. I understand the value of creating Leon Sullivans. I don't need none of the fanfare. I'm gonna play the back, baby, and everybody gonna eat and we gonna win. What I am gonna have is a couple of schools named Daphne where everything that I want taken care of in North Philadelphia is being done.
Hey, Vanessa, let me say this to people before we go. And if you're
Real
listening
quick,
to
we
this,
got just a couple minutes.
yeah, I know. If you're listening, remember, in Philadelphia, to me, leaders that I always keep in my cell phone are the following folks: block captains, nonprofit leaders, and folks like D. Lloyd. They give me legitimacy when I go into a community. That's who you need to remember. Your neighborhood block captain, that person in your block that's been the block captain, they are the true leaders. They never change. And that's the efficiency about them. The elected officials can come and gone, but Mrs. McGill been in that block for 50 years.
I listen,
And she can tell you everything. Right.
Right.
I'm
I
gonna
walk you to
try to-
school. Yeah.
I'm going to try to bring this home, but first I want to, again, speak on the point where you said it doesn't have to be complicated. And one of the things that we do as part of my organizing with Philly Boricuas is we provide information in Spanish.
Yep.
You know,
Nice.
Bernie Sanders' ground game in Nevada was so successful because they
Wow.
hired all of these bilingual people and they
Right.
provided voting information in Spanish, and they went door to door, and young Latino organizers gave out this information in Spanish, told people where to go vote and how to get registered and all of that. And so the other thing it requires is making the information accessible. And I
Yep.
think it's really important that these campaign staff hire people of color, right? You really can't do outreach in our community if you're not bilingual. You got to speak the language,
Yep.
you got to understand the culture, and you also have to be culturally competent enough to know the differences within our own communities, right?
Yep.
Because Mount Airy is not the same as North Philly,
Right.
right? So we have to have people involved in these campaigns that can speak to people at their level, who are people from the community like Bill, who are recognizable, who are relatable, who are trustworthy. And you have to have a diversity of people out there. If your staff is mostly white, it's not going to work out.
Well,
Yeah, but Vanessa, we're all blackballed. Like, that's what people don't recognize. That all people like me across the country, like I'm currently blackballed from working with the DNC. Or the DNC, the DCCC, which funds the DNC, blackballed. There's a list of us. So we are the individuals who are working with all of these other organizations that are building infrastructure and knocking out older Democratic incumbents. Like, I'm not, my opponent isn't currently a Republican. It's a Democrat who sat in office for 31 years. So, the Democratic Party has no interest in turning out the votes in these places, because even like all they have to do if they want Obama results, hire the people that you hired when you got Obama the win. That is the thing that nobody's actually really paying attention to. It's where they invested their money that got them the result. It has nothing to do with anything else in politics. I can tell you at every single race, I can tell you exactly what the outcome is if I'm looking at the budget 100% of the time.
Well, guys, I know we could talk forever. I can't believe it's been 2 hours already. But I want to thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in the community, for always, coming on to Philly Cam and sharing your knowledge and resources. Special shout out to D. Lloyd, who delivers great programming every week. Tell listeners where they can follow you, D. Lloyd, on TLC.
Okay, you can follow me, of course, at WPPM LP 106.5 FM in Philadelphia on the TuneIn app, or phillycam.org/listen, or you can go to my website, turninglifecorners.com, turninglifecorners.com.